present John Moffat, Jeremy Clyde, and Madeline Smith in Agatha Christie's Murder on the Links.
And damnation.
Oh, I say.
Oh, dear, did I shock you?
Oh, no, not in the least.
I'm so sorry about my language. Most unladylike and all that. But I've lost my sister.
Really? That's most unfortunate.
He disapproves. He disapproves of my unladylike language, of me, of my sister, which is most unfair because you haven't even seen her.
Well, now, look here.
Say no more. Nobody loves me. I am crushed. I knew you couldn't be such a mutt as you looked.
Oh.
Not that I'm against a little dignified disapproval, and I like a man who can still be shocked in this day and age. You see, my sister and I are in the theatre.
You're an actress?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. We've got a sort of song and dance act with a bit of comic patter thrown in. It's quite a good idea, and it does get them every time. Somehow they don't expect people to be able to dance and speak.
She was enchanting. A curious mixture of child and woman. Though perfectly worldly wise, there was yet something oddly ingenuous in her single-minded determination.
We're going to make money, I'm sure of it. If only she hadn't missed the bloody train. Oh, dear. I'd go again.
It was a day in early June. I had been transacting some business in Paris and was returning by the morning train to London.
So what do you do?
I'm a sort of private secretary to an MP.
That sounds so important. I'm distinctly impressed.
Oh, there's really awfully little to do. Usually a couple of hours a day sees me through. It's pretty dull, too. I don't know what I should do if I hadn't something to fall back on.
Your etchings?
No. I share rooms with a very interesting man. He's Belgian. He's set up as a private detective in London, now that he's retired from the police. Sometimes he lets me help him out.
I just adore crime. I go to all the mysteries at the movies, and when there's a murder on, I simply devour the papers.
The miles flew by. We were so absorbed in one another that we were in Calais before we realized it.
Goodbye, and I'll mind my language in future.
Oh, but surely you'll let me look after you on the boat.
Oh, I may not be on it. I've got to find out where that sister of mine has got to.
We're going to meet again, surely. Aren't you even going to tell me your name?
Cinderella.
Ah, Hastings, you are the eternal romantic. You see a girl on the train, you talk to her for a couple of hours, and you do not even know her name. Mon ami, you restore my faith in the absurdity of the human race. And now tell me, what is in the Morning Post?
2 bills, a letter from the Boy Scouts.
No doubt they wish me to deliver a lecture.
And this, postmarked Merlinville-sur-Mer.
Oh, let me see.
Well, that's somewhere between Calais and Boulogne, isn't it?
Listen to this. Dear Monsieur Poirot, I am in need of the services of a private detective. On account of a secret I possess, I go in daily fear of my life. I am convinced that the danger is imminent, and therefore beg that you lose no time in crossing to France. I will send a car to meet you at Calais, if you will wire me when you are arriving. I shall probably need your services for a considerable period of time, as it may be necessary for you to go to Santiago. Oh. P.T. Renault. And there is a postscript. For God's sake, come.
You'll go, of course.
Of course. There's no time to lose. The Continental Express leaves Victoria at 11. You will accompany me?
Oh, but Poirot, I've only
just...
Oh,
come. After all, who will ever notice your absence?
Who is this chap, anyway?
A well-known South American millionaire. Come, let us pack.
At Calais there was no car to meet us, but Poirot did not seem unduly put out and promptly hired one. A little way outside Merlinville, a girl with the figure of a young goddess showed us the rough, narrow road that led to the Renault house, the Villa Geneviève.
What did I tell you, Hastings? The eternal romantic.
But didn't you think she was beautiful?
Oh, mon ami, two people rarely see the same thing. You, for instance, saw a goddess, while I
What did you see?
saw only a girl with anxious eyes.
Something's wrong. There are police everywhere. What's happening?
You can't go any further, monsieur.
But we have to see Monsieur Renaud. This is his villa, isn't it?
Yes, monsieur, it is his villa. But I'm afraid that Monsieur Renaud was found dead this morning.
Do you mean he was murdered?
I cannot answer any questions, monsieur.
Very well. Will you have the goodness to see that this is taken to the commissary at once? What is his name?
Inspector Bex.
My dear Monsieur Poirot, your arrival is most opportune. You have information to give which may assist us?
Possibly you know it already. Were you aware that I had been sent for by the dead man?
What?
It seems he knew an attempt was to be made on his life.
He sent for you? Well, that upsets our theories considerably. Let me take you to the examining magistrate. He's in the salon.
Most extraordinary. But what is this secret he mentions? What a pity he wasn't more explicit. We're much indebted to you, Monsieur Poirot. I hope you will do us the honour of assisting us in our investigation.
I did not arrive in time to prevent my client's death, but I feel myself bound in honour to discover the assassin.
I am sure that Madame Renaud will wish to retain your services. And I am sure Monsieur Giraud of the Sûreté, whom we expect at any moment, will be grateful for your assistance. Monsieur Bex, perhaps you will be so good as to give Monsieur Poirot an outline of the case.
The first sign that something was wrong was early this morning, when Françoise, an old servant, found that the front door was open. She thought that her master had gone out for a stroll. A little while later, Léonie, the young maid, went to call her mistress and found her gagged and bound, and almost at the same moment news was brought that Monsieur Renaud's body had been discovered. He'd been stabbed in the back.
Where was the body found?
Well, that is one of the most extraordinary features of the case. The body was lying face downwards in an open grave, just a few yards outside the villa grounds.
And how long had he been dead?
According to Dr. Durand, he died sometime between midnight and 3 a.m.
And Madame Renaud's evidence narrows the time to after 2 a.m. Death must have been instantaneous and naturally could not have been self-inflicted.
What did she tell you?
We've not been able to question her. She's still under sedation.
What have you gathered from the other people who live in the house?
Well, the chauffeur is on holiday and Monsieur Renaud's son Jacques is away.
Which leaves us with the two women servants. I was about to interview them when you arrived. I hope you will do me the honour of being present at my interrogation.
Françoise Arichet.
You have been in service at the Villa Geneviève for a long time?
I was here for 11 years with the old countess, and when the villa was sold, I agreed to stay on with her.
Now, I understand that when you came down this morning, you found the front door was open. Was that right?
Yes, that's right. I remember that I heard him lock up last night after she left, and...
Just a moment. After who had left?
The lady who came to see him.
And who was she?
Well, how should I know?
Well, I'm sure you know very well who she was, and you're obliged to tell the police. Who was she?
I never thought I'd be mixed up with the police. Very well, I'll tell you. It was Madame Dobray. She often comes round in the evenings.
Madame Dobray from the Villa Marguerite?
That's the place, just down the road.
So you're saying that Monsieur Renaud and Madame Dobray were...
Well, I'm not saying anything. She's not so young any longer, but I've seen the way men look at her when she goes down the street. And just lately, she's had more money to spend. Everyone's noticed.
And can you tell us what time Monsieur Renaud let her out?
About 25 minutes past 10.
Do you know what time he went to bed?
I heard him come up about 10 minutes after we did. The stairs creak so that you can hear anyone going up and down.
Thank you, Françoise. That will be all.
Léonie Hollande.
Now, mademoiselle, I understand that it was you who admitted Madame Dobray last night.
Not last night, monsieur. The night before.
But Françoise has just told us that Madame Dobray was here last night.
No, monsieur. A lady did come to see Monsieur Renaud last night, but it was not Madame Dobray. This lady was much younger. And there is one other thing.
And what is that?
I think she was English. At least she was speaking to Monsieur Renaud in English, and he was speaking English as well. When he opened the door to let her out, he said... Yes, but for God's sake, go now.
Thank you, mademoiselle.
Is that all?
For the present. But this is most interesting. Show Monsieur Poirot the letter.
The letter?
The letter we found in Renault's overcoat. It was written in English and was obviously from a woman.
Thank you, Monsieur Bex. Perhaps you would care to read it to us, Hastings?
My dearest, why have you not written for so long? You do love me still, don't you? I can't live without you. Sometimes I fancy another woman is coming between us. If that is so, take care. I'd as soon kill you as lose you to another woman. I mean it. How can I convince you how much I love you? Your own adoring Bella.
And what do you make of it, monsieur?
It would seem to offer a very simple explanation for the murder. But crime passionnel does not really answer to the facts of the case. It does not account for the masked men or for Renault's letter to you. Though there is one other thing.
And what is that?
The dead man's will. Take a look.
Everything left unconditionally to his beloved wife Eloise. Simply drawn up, but perfectly legal.
Perhaps you have not noticed...
The date? Yes, I noticed it. A fortnight ago. Possibly it marks his first intimation of danger.
Don't you think it's a little hard on his son? It leaves him entirely dependent on his mother, and if she were to marry again...
Oh, man is a vain animal. Doubtless Monsieur Renault was certain that his wife would never marry again. Or perhaps he thought it would be wiser to leave all the money in his wife's hands. The sons of rich men are notoriously wild.
It may be as you say. And now, I am sure you would like to visit the scene of the crime. Monsieur Bex will show you where the body was found.
This way, gentlemen.
Just a moment, if you please. That room there, is that Monsieur Renault's study?
You would like to see it?
Thank you. Monsieur Renault was evidently a man of taste and order. Everything in its place. Except for the hearthrug. It is crooked.
What have you found?
A scrap of paper. In France, as in England, the domestics omit to sweep under mats. Do you see what it is?
A fragment of a cheque. It appears to be made out to someone named Duveen.
And if I am not mistaken, the handwriting is that of Monsieur Renault.
I really cannot imagine how I came to overlook this. Renault's chequebook was on his desk. I remember noting that, but the last counterfoil is blank.
The murdered man's body lay in a shed at the back of the house. Monsieur Renault looked to be about 50 years of age. His skin was deeply bronzed. On his face was an expression of absolute amazement and terror.
Have you any idea with what weapon the crime was committed?
It was left in the wound. Here it is.
Yeah, it looks like a paper knife. It is remarkably sharp. A nice little tool for murder. No fingerprints?
None.
Monsieur?
Yes? What is it?
Madame is much recovered and ready to receive the examining magistrate.
Tell Monsieur Ote and say that we will come at once.
Very good, monsieur.
Monsieur Renault wore only underclothes under his overcoat?
Yes. Monsieur Ote thinks that is rather a curious point.
And his overcoat is unusually long.
Take care. The stairs are rather worn.
And noisy, too. They creak fit to wake the dead.
Servants' quarters are along there.
Come in. Pray be seated, gentlemen.
I hope that it will not distress you too much to tell us what happened last night.
Not in the least. I know that you must act swiftly if you're to catch my husband's murderers.
It might tire you less if I were to ask you questions. Now, what is the first thing you remember?
I felt a hand being pressed over my mouth. The light was turned on. There were 2 men in the room.
Can you describe them?
I could see very little of their faces. They were masked. One was very tall and had a long black beard. The other was shorter and stout, and his beard was red. He was the one who was holding me.
He forced a gag into my mouth and then bound up my hands and feet.
And what about your husband?
They forced him into the room next door. I could hear them talking in Spanish. They said something about a secret. They wanted to know where it was hidden. And then they hurried my husband out of the room. He was only half-dressed. The tall man said, "One sound and you're a dead man." I must have fainted after that.
And do you have any idea for what they were searching?
None whatever.
Tell me, madame, had your husband shown any sign of anxiety before the attack?
He seemed distracted, and he wouldn't tell me what was wrong.
Were you aware that he had called in the services of a detective?
A detective?
Yes, this gentleman, Monsieur Hercule Poirot.
Madame?
I had no idea of this.
I see. What time was the crime committed?
I remember hearing the clock on the mantelpiece strike 2.
Ah, there's a watch on the floor. It looks as if one of the men trod on it.
It's mine. It must have fallen off the dressing table.
But it says 7 o'clock.
Let me see. The glass is broken, but it is still going.
But it's only 5 o'clock now.
It is of no importance. Are you aware that your husband had a visitor last night?
No. Who was it?
A lady.
Indeed.
Forgive me, madame, but do you recognize this?
Yes. That's my little paper knife. But was that...
Yes, madame. Your husband was killed with this weapon.
They took it from my dressing table. It was a present from my son. It was made from a streamline airplane wire. He was in the Air Force during the war.
Which brings us to another matter. Where is your son now?
He's on his way to Buenos Aires. My husband telegraphed him last night to tell him to go there straight away.
And do you know why?
I have no idea. He was going overland from there to Santiago.
Santiago? Everything seems to bring us back to Santiago.
Pardon, madame, but may I examine your wrists?
If you wish, monsieur.
They must cause you great pain.
There was a look of disappointment in his eyes. The magistrate led Madame Renaud down the stairs and out to the shed to identify the body.
Are you ready, madame?
Yes, monsieur. Oh, my God. Paul, my beloved.
Oh, madame. Hastings, I am an imbecile. If ever there was love and grief in a woman's voice, I heard it then. I must start again.
Beck set off for the scene of the crime, but Poirot stopped by the flower beds on either side of the steps leading up to the front door.
The murderer could easily have climbed up to the bedroom by that tree on the left.
But they could not have done so without leaving footsteps in the flower bed.
You are right. And there is not the least sign. But in the other flower bed, there are plenty of footprints.
I think you'll find they are those of the gardener.
So you think they are of no importance?
Not the least.
Bex led us along a path bordered by a shrubbery on either side. Suddenly we emerged onto a wide stretch of open downs with a distant view of the sea. It was a golf course.
The links will not be open until next month. It was the men who were working on them who discovered the body this morning. In that pit over there.
But there's someone there now.
My men have had strict orders to allow no one to interfere.
I am not exactly no one, Monsieur Bex, and I have every right.
My dear Monsieur Giraud. Gentlemen, this is Monsieur Giraud of the Sûreté.
The famous detective from Paris was already familiar to me by name. There was a distinct arrogance in his manner which showed he was fully alive to his own importance.
Poirot, I know you by name. You cut quite a figure in the old days, didn't you?
Crimes do not change much over the years.
The police should have been prevented from trampling all over the place. But the vital evidence is still there.
The external signs, that is what you seek?
Of course. You see that spade? It was used to dig the grave. And those gloves at your feet? Renault's spade and Renault's gloves. The man was stabbed with his own dagger. His own gloves held his own spade with which his grave was dug.
And this piece of lead piping, did this belong to the murdered man?
It may have been lying around for weeks. Anyway, it doesn't interest me.
It interests me. But no matter. Monsieur Bex, what is the meaning of this white line that extends all the way around the grave? Is it the work of your men?
No, Monsieur Poirot. It is part of the work on the golf course. It is the outline of a bunker.
But what a curious place to bury a body. Huh? When the men began to dig up the ground, all would be discovered.
Exactly. Which proves that the murderers were strangers to the place.
Unless, of course, they wanted the body to be discovered. Which is clearly absurd, is it not?
I must admit I was beginning to worry that Poirot was losing his grip. He continued to mutter on to himself about the lead piping and the broken wristwatch. He proved that the footprints in the flower bed were made by the gardener's boots, and he did not seem in the least impressed by Monsieur Otte's discovery that Madame de Broglie had paid 200,000 francs into her bank account in the last 6 weeks.
It is getting late, but I think we should pay her a visit. It is possible that he may have told her the secret he did not confide to his wife.
We walked through the cool of the evening to the Villa Marguerite.
She's lived here for many years. Very quiet, very unobtrusive.
And then I realized that the villa was the home of the beautiful girl with the figure of a goddess.
Monsieur, what do you want?
She was more beautiful than I had remembered, but deathly white and very ill at ease. She led us through to her mother's room.
But what possible help can I be to you?
We have reason to believe, madame, that you were an intimate friend of Monsieur Renaud.
What are you saying?
That you frequently visited his villa in the evening, is that so?
I deny your right to ask me such a question.
Madame, we are investigating a murder.
I had nothing to do with the murder.
We do not say that for a moment, but you knew the dead man well. Did he ever talk about any danger that threatened him?
Never.
Nor of any enemies he may have made in South America.
He said nothing. I really cannot see why you should come to me. Cannot his wife tell you what you want to know?
Sometimes, madame, a man tells his mistress what he does not always tell his wife.
Have the goodness to leave my house, monsieur.
We left the Villa Marguerite like a shamefaced pack of schoolboys. Otte and Bex went back to the scene of the crime. Poirot and I set off towards the Hôtel des Bains in Merlinville, where we had booked rooms.
The French police system is marvelous. The information they possess about everyone's life.
Monsieur!
Mademoiselle.
I beg your pardon. I should not do this, I know. You must not tell my mother.
Of course not, mademoiselle.
Is it true that you are the detective Monsieur Renaud called in before he died?
Yes, it is quite true. But how did you learn it?
Françoise told our maid.
Well, mademoiselle, what is it you want to know?
Is anyone suspected of the crime?
Why do you want to know?
Monsieur Renaud was always very kind to me. It is natural that I should be interested.
I see. Well, mademoiselle, suspicion at present is hovering around 2 persons.
2?
Their names are unknown, but they are presumed to be Chileans from Santiago. And now you see what comes of being young and beautiful. I have betrayed professional secrets for you. Come, Hastings, we must be getting back to our hotel.
Goodbye, mademoiselle.
Goodbye, monsieur, and thank you.
Nowhere to hang my clothes, no one to polish my shoes. You are not listening to me, Hastings.
What was that?
I have seen that look on your face before. Do not set your heart on Mademoiselle de Broglie. She is not for you.
She has the face of an angel.
Some of the greatest criminals I have known had the faces of angels. A malformation of the little grey cells may coincide quite easily with the face of a Madonna.
You can't suspect that poor innocent girl.
If only I could remember where I had seen that face.
Mademoiselle Marthe?
No, her mother's. It was a long time ago when I was still with the police in Belgium. I have never actually seen her before, but I have seen her picture, and I rather fancy... I may be mistaken, but I fancy it was a murder case.
We were up at the villa early next morning. Poirot started to draw out the young maid, Léonie, on the subject of a quarrel she had overheard between Monsieur Renaud and his son.
I was dusting the salon and I saw him pass, and his face was white with 2 burning spots of red.
I had a mind to take another look at the scene of the crime. I fought my way through the shrubbery and found myself on the links, some 100 yards away from where the murder had been committed. A young lady was standing with her back to me, gazing out towards the sea. She turned and looked at me.
What are you doing here?
Cinderella!
When I last saw you the day before yesterday, you were going home to England like a good little boy.
When I last saw you, you were trotting home with your sister like a good little girl. How is your sister?
How kind of you to ask. She's quite well, thank you.
She is here with you?
She remained in town.
I don't believe you've got a sister. What are you doing here, anyway?
Resting, I suppose you've heard of the term. And what are you doing here?
You remember that I told you I had a great friend who was a detective?
I remember.
And perhaps you've heard of this murder at the Villa Marguerite.
You don't mean to say you're on that?
As a matter of fact, I am.
Oh, then you must take me to see everything.
How do you mean?
The place where it happened and the murder weapon and any fingerprints or interesting things like that. I've never had a chance of being right in on a murder like this. Oh, please.
I didn't need much persuasion. I told her most of what I knew. I showed her where the body had been discovered. I even got the key of the little shed and showed her the body itself.
Oh, it's horrible. To think that a few hours ago he was still alive. Do they know how he was killed?
He was killed with a dagger. It's in this glass jar here.
Oh, there's blood on it! My God!
Let's get you out of here. It's been too much for you.
No. I'll be all right. Get me some water quickly.
I rushed off to the house. Fortunately, none of the servants was about, and I was able to secure a glass of water unobserved and add a few drops of brandy from my pocket flask.
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's better. Why did you let me go in there?
Because you insisted. It was your idea.
I suppose it was. Well, I'd better be off.
But you can't go just like that. You're not well.
Nonsense, I'm quite all right now.
Won't you let me come with you?
There is nothing wrong with me, I assure you. You've been very kind. I hope you won't get into trouble for showing me things.
Don't give it a second thought, but you haven't told me your address.
Oh, I'm staying at the Hotel de Phare. It's a little place, but quite good. Come and look me up tomorrow.
It wasn't until I got back to the villa that I realized I still didn't know her name. I found Poirot in the drawing room, doing his best to preserve his patience with the appalling Giraud. Monsieur Otet preserved an aloof silence.
What do you see there?
A cigarette end and a match.
And what does that tell you?
It tells me nothing.
Obviously, you haven't made a study of these things. Oh. It is no ordinary match. It comes from South America. Luckily, it was unlit. Otherwise, I might not have recognized it. Evidently, one of the assassins threw away his cigarette and lit another, spilling one match out of the box as he did so.
And the other match?
Which match?
The one he did light his cigarette with? You have found that also?
It is of no importance. The cigarette end is enough. It is a South American cigarette with licorice pectoral paper.
But it is only 4 years since Monsieur Renaud returned from South America. Might not the cigarette and match belong to him?
No. I have already searched among the effects of Monsieur Renaud. His cigarettes were quite different.
Tell me, Monsieur Giraud, does nothing strike you as familiar about this case? Is there nothing it reminds you of?
I can't say offhand. I don't think so.
Nevertheless, a crime almost precisely similar has been committed before.
When and where?
That unfortunately I can't for the moment remember, but I shall do so.